Hi, my name is Peyton and I love studying Korean. Now, I could talk about how the Korea I know is home to the great Korean language, which it is, but truthfully, the Korea I know is that and so much more. I have never visited Korea, so my judgments are based solely on what I have heard from others. So how do I know the Korea I say I know? Well, my favorite way to learn more about Korea is from Koreans who may be Korean nationals or of Korean ethnicity. One of my first experiences learning about Korea as a country and a nation was reading a book by Eun Hong, a Korean American. The book tells a story of how South Korea overcame the treacherous IMF crisis and experienced significant economic growth through various methods, one of which included exporting Korean culture, which in turn sparked the Korean wave, or Hallyu. Interested in learning more, I enrolled in Korean language and culture classes in university. It was through these classes that I was able to learn in depth about traditional Korean houses Hanok, the Korean floor heating system Ondur, Korean holidays, and other specific Korean cultural aspects such as Tong and Han. Also through these classes, I learned about events promoting Korean culture, showcasing aspects of Korean culture such as traditional Korean dances, traditional Korean games, and Korean food. Some other places I have learned a great deal about Korea are from YouTubers such as DKDKTV and Talk to Me in Korean. YouTube videos about Korea are free options I like to recommend to anyone interested in learning more about Korea. And what does all I have experienced have in common? Each of my experiences were the result of actions by Korean people, be it the coordinating of a cultural event by a Korean person, the answer to a question about Korean culture given by a Korean person, or the sharing of information about Korea by a Korean person. And of course, none of this information would be available if it weren't for Korean history. I have had the privilege of getting to know the traditions, customs, history, and language of a great country through participation in classes, attending events, reading books, and watching videos about Korea. And it is all thanks to the Korean people who have a deep appreciation for Korea. This is why I am happy to say that the Korea I know is the Korea that I have learned about from Koreans. What would Korea be without Korean people? It simply wouldn't be Korea. Korean people make up the nation that made modern Korean culture as the world knows it today. The world has felt the growing popularity of Korean culture, and I believe this is all due to the strong patriotism felt in the hearts of Korean people. So should you come across an opportunity to learn about Korea from someone who has a great appreciation for the country, I highly recommend that you take on that opportunity. That way, the Korea I know may also become the Korea you know.